This video will show you how to replace the power steering rack bellows boot on a Ford Transit-250. This is part of the front steering and suspension, located behind your front wheel. Let's get into it. After the replacement of this part, you will want to get yourself a four-wheel alignment. Okay friend, let's get started on our job. Safely raise and support the front end of the vehicle so your front wheel's off the ground. Now once we've done that, we're going to be using a 21mm to remove all 5 of our lug nuts. Then we can remove that wheel. Let's set that aside. Now that we have the wheel out of the way, we have a clear view of our tie rod ends leading towards our bellows boot and power steering rack. Now in this area, you're going to find that you have a 24mm jam nut. This is in between the inner and the outer tie rod end. We need to break this free. Now I mentioned this is a 24mm mounting nut, but I'm going to use long pliers to break this free so I have a little leverage. We're going to be turning this clockwise. I'm turning it clockwise so it can go up the inner tie rod away from the outer tie rod end. Now that I have movement from that, we can continue on. To remove the outer tie rod end from the steering knuckle, we have a 21mm mounting nut. Let's go ahead and remove that. Once you have it removed, a quick inspection, we're going to start it back on just a couple threads. Now we need to separate this area. This can be done using a separator tool, or you can use a hammer. A couple light taps will cause vibration. It should break it free. At this point, let's take hold of the outer tie rod end. We're going to start turning this counterclockwise. Count the amount of turns it takes to remove it and take note of that. 1, 2, and so on. Your results may vary. My count was 20. Like I mentioned, your results may vary. It depends on the alignment for your vehicle. A quick inspection and we'll set this aside. Continuing on, we need to remove our 24mm jam nut from the inner tie rod end. We want to prevent this from spinning, so you can either use a wrench or you can use some pliers. I'm using locking pliers. There's our jam nut. Quick inspection, we'll set this aside. Now with that out of the way, we're following the inner tie rod end all the way up to where we can see our power steering rack bellows boot. We're starting at the outer aspect. We do have a small squeezable clamp, so I'm using some long nose pliers. We can take hold of those ears and we'll slide that out of place. Once that clamp's out of the position, we want to continue on with a small pick. I like to try to break this boot free from this area. We're not moving it yet, but I do want to make sure that I can move it when it is time. So I'm breaking it free and I also use some lubricant. Now as we continue making our way towards that power steering rack, all the way on the far side of that bellows boot, we're looking for our inboard clamp. This clamp is a single-time use clamp, so we're breaking it free and we're going to dispose of it properly. You can use a wire tie for the installation process. Let's take hold of that bellows boot. We'll give it a gentle twist and slide it out and away. There it is, friend. Now, prior to installation of our part, let's make sure we clean and inspect our mounting area. We have the inner tie rod end. We'll make sure we clean all the way down to this groove here. That groove is where that power steering rack bellows boot would sit. Let's make our way all the way up to the power steering rack. We're cleaning that mounting area as well. We'll take this and we're sliding it over the inner tie rod end. We have to bring it all the way down to the power steering rack. We'll make sure that it's properly seated all the way around. Assuming it is, we're going to continue on holding this in place. Now, as I mentioned, we can use a wire tie for this. We just want to make sure it's nice and tight and no moisture or debris can make its way into that power steering rack. Now that I have that in place, I'm going to make sure it's nice and tight. For these wire ties, I like to take hold of them with some long nose pliers. I'll just give it a twist. Double check, make sure that's secured. We'll trim off any excess. Use some cutters for that. It's time for the outer clamp. The outer clamp's going to go on the outer portion of the boot. First, let's make sure we're in the proper area. That is where we applied grease in that groove. We'll slide our clamp all the way down in that area. Now we have our long nose pliers. We can take hold of that, squeeze it, and we'll slide it into place. Take hold of the boot, confirm it's properly secured. It should spin, but it should not slide out of position. Let's continue on with some anti-seize. I'm going to make my way approximately halfway up these threads here. Now at this point, we can continue on with our jam nut. We'll take that jam nut. We're going to bring it approximately halfway up the threads here. Let's apply some anti-seize along this area for the outer tie rod end. Now we can install our outer tie rod end. We're going to start this on. When we install this, we want to make sure we install it the same amount of turns as it took to remove it originally. That was 1, 2, and so on. As I mentioned, your results may vary. We'll just adjust that as necessary so we can make our adjustment point here. Before we tighten that jam nut, let's make sure that we bring this tie rod end into place. We're aligning it with our steering knuckle. Go ahead and start on our mounting nut. After that, we can bottom it out, and I'm going to torque that to 59 foot-pounds. Now let's make our way back to the jam nut. We're going to turn this counterclockwise so it rests against the outer tie rod end. Continuing on, I'm just going to be turning this counterclockwise. I want to make sure it locks in up against that tie rod end. Right there's where it bottoms out. We'll just take it a tiny bit further. Let's just have a quick look at the outer tie rod end. We want to make sure that we have this level with the ground. You can tell that I am a little off kilter here. Of course, this is easily pivotable. Just take hold of it with some pliers, make any adjustment necessary. Once you have the wheel in place, go ahead and start on all 5 of your 21mm lug nuts. You're going to bottom them out in a crisscross manner. Once you have the wheel back on the ground, torque each one of the lug nuts to 148 foot-pounds. Now I have the wheel back on the ground. Let's go ahead and torque each one of our lug nuts to that 148 foot-pounds. Torqued. Okay friend, we finished the installation. Now the next thing we have to do is make our way inside the passenger compartment. You're going to take your vehicle for a road test down to your local alignment shop. Thanks for watching.
When only the best will do, demand TRQ. The only company that lets you view before you do. TRQ is committed to offering the highest quality aftermarket auto parts that are engineered for peace of mind. Thanks for using and viewing with TRQ.